Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this edition of the Players NIL. And my guest today is Nicole Rawson. Nicole, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm very interested in talking about your topic of conversation, and that is, the use of social media, the impact it has on young people, specifically athletes. We'll get into that. But to start, I always start with the same questions because to me it's relevant to where we are. So our mission statement at the Players NIL is, to use athletics to better our lives. So to create opportunities, networking. And it doesn't mean that you have to be a star athlete to do that. It may be a passion. It may be you are just a participant. But I go back to before we, talk about the current business model of name, image, and likeness, why are sports and athletes important to you? And so we talk about two words. The first is sports, and that's kind of like the fandom. The first game you went to, the first sport you played, your neighbor, your grandmother, your grandfather, your mom, your dad. And then we'll talk about athletics. That would be your participation if that applies. And so tell me about your early memories of sports. Who were the stars that you followed? What were the sports that you were interested in?
Oddly enough, when I grew up, I actually wasn't allowed to watch much TV. So I didn't really see a whole lot of sports on TV. I'm from Minnesota. My parents were pretty conservative, and you just had to be outside doing things. And so I guess that's how I came across sports, just as a way to fritter away time and, go play with the other kids. And I was a little taller than most growing up. So, whether it was out swinging on the monkey bars or throwing a ball back and forth, it was a way to engage with others and to experience this, camaraderie.
Yeah. Minnesota, I would think there was some hockey in that equation as well, right?
There was. That's how I learned how to whistle with my fingers.
I love it. So what were some of your early, formal participation in sports? Your first team, your first school program, whatever.
I was a pretty terrible athlete to start. I remember that we had to run. I wanted to play basketball, but it involved too much running. And then I slowly tried to choose sports around not running. Soccer had too much running, and softball, they made us run a lot. So I eventually settled with volleyball. And it turns out they ran us to the death too with volleyball. So it was more of an avoidance of what my skills fit to start out. And but it was fun just trying everything out and seeing what finally stuck as we get older and our skills mature and our bodies mature, to then finally, in high school, I was like, wow, I'm actually a really good athlete, and volleyball is my jam, and I'm better than most, and people have taken notice, and I want to play at the next level in college, and really took it from there.
What was recruiting like?
Oh, recruiting, we had to make VHS tapes and send them out. And I was very self-motivated with that too. My parents still say, like, we don't even know how you thought to do this. And there wasn't the internet, and you just picked colleges based on what you wanted to study at the time. And you made VHS tapes and you sent them out to these college coaches, and lo and behold, a lot of them followed up with me. So I was doing something right at the time to be self-promoting and advocating for myself. And, that was the big difference even back then. I can tell from now, it's the athletes that are very advocates for themselves that are the ones that are successful.
So you were being an entrepreneur of sorts.
I was always. I wish Shark Tank was around back then, because I would have been on it at some point, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's the perfect story, right? You at some point turn your passion into an opportunity and using athletics. And we talk about people can use travel and food and fashion and cars and cooking and all types of things, but there are some people that they choose athletics, and that's what we're about. So you choose volleyball because you don't want to run, then they run you. But then you realize that, hey, I might be pretty good at this. Maybe I can force multiply myself and get an opportunity to go to college. Tell us about your college experience. And I don't mean the wins and the losses. Tell us about the journey, the maturity, the growth. What did you learn about yourself? What did you learn about people during your college athletic experience?
Yeah, and then when I finally got into college, I didn't do very well picking the college, actually, because I only went on one recruiting trip when you could have had five. So in hindsight, it would have been nice to have a little bit of guidance or a, video like what you guys produce at NIL about how to go about things in the process and what to look for. So I just went on one recruiting trip, had a really good time and thought, wow, this is the life for me. And I signed right then and there to go to the University of New Mexico when I had a lot of California schools interested too and others. And it turned out to be fine. It was a good education, but I fast tracked my way out of that as soon as possible. And I used athletics to open up a door. Within 3 years, I graduated and had a full-time teaching and head coaching job at the volleyball team at the largest local high school there. So again, that was an opportunity that I wouldn't have had if it wasn't for athletics, but I knew that I was smart enough to do both the teaching job and the coaching job, even though I didn't even have a degree in teaching, and just keep leveling on up with the people that I met and those doors that kept opening because I kept pushing them.
What were some of the things you tried to, the words of wisdom, the nuggets that you tried to impart on your student athletes in those days?
Oh, I would say just enjoy meeting so many people and don't rush the college experience and don't be so hard on yourself and just, nothing's perfect and you don't have to play all the time. Just enjoy being part of that team and having your youth and really valuing relationships, because when you look back on them, they're a lot more important than maybe what you give them credit for in the moment. So I still have a lot of really that my teammates from college are some of my best friends still today. And in the moment, I wouldn't have thought that because I blew through college so quick just to get away from it and start my life. But it's really a wonderful opportunity that I wish a lot more kids had access to. And we see so few students wanting to play sports anymore too. It's an unfortunate trend that we really want to encourage as many people to participate and take it to the next level as possible.
So volleyball is one of those sports where off-season volleyball may be bigger than high school volleyball in terms of AAU travel teams, tournaments. I had someone tell me recently that they feel like there's a decline in some participation levels of sports because we've created this gap between the haves and the have-nots. And kids feel like if I can't travel every weekend and go to tournaments, I'm never going to make it. It's specific to volleyball, that seems to be true. You started, it sounds like, at an early age, understanding that there's a balance to life and that, if your whole self-worth is just being an athlete, that maybe you're going to be disappointed at some point. And so we have this disparity. We have all of this focus on athletics, all this focus on success, outside success, and probably not as much focus on the individual as we need, which brings us to your current occupation, preoccupation perhaps. But tell us a little bit about what you're working on now, your company, and why you feel it's important.
Sure. So after many years of teaching, and I was fortunate to move all over the world, actually, in many different states I taught in, finally, about 5 years ago, I noticed as a teacher that students were very disengaged in the classroom. They were constantly on their devices. They were not going out to play during recess time or during breaks. They weren't signing up for sports. They were all on their devices, and it was so troubling. And at the same time, I saw this in my own sons that I was raising as a single mom, trying to keep them engaged in sports, that they were kind of like me. They tried every single sport because I was very persistent. They stay in something, whether it be piano, chess, or sports. And so I really wanted to step back from teaching, and I created my company Screen Time Clinic to educate others about the importance of moderation from screen time, that to be a full human and really tap into our human talents, that we need to set the screens aside, especially it turns out now for youth, and focus on our accomplishments and our human connections and building really strong muscles and brain and a healthy body during this important formative years. And it's only been recently that the research has come out and said how really important it is, and all the correlation to even athletic performance once you are an athlete, how it interferes with your performance there too, not just becoming an athlete and being interested in it.
Can you share with our audience some of the metrics, some of the statistics about amount of use and beginning age? Tell me something about the industry that we'd be interested in.
So the latest research shows that brain trauma results from using screens at an earlier age. And unfortunately, my son, he's 19, almost 20 now. I was one of the many parents probably that thought baby Einstein was going to make him brilliant. And so I have pictures of him doing tummy time as a 12-month-old watching baby Einstein, probably for a very long time while, I went out and played volleyball, maybe, who knows? But it turns out this earlier exposure and more time on it actually causes brain trauma. So we want to delay this time on screens, and then, well, what can we do about it now if that was the case? Because nobody really intended for that. So our brains are still very neuroplastic, and we can make changes just the way that we do with discipline and self-discipline and habits. So we can change our brains into mid-20s, and then, there haven't been studies about that, but it's really important to reprogram and to make some healthy choices and to be very disciplined on your time online as you are on the court.
I feel like the cell phone craze is a good thing, bad thing, right? Probably from a security standpoint, you want your kids to be in communication, or if there's a problem, you'd like them to be able to call home or get a ride, know where they are, all of those parenting things. But of course, like everything in this world, we take everything to excess. Is there a good time for a kid, a young person, athlete or not, that they should be engaged in video games or online? And it may be a personal opinion, but what does the science say about the right time that it can be healthy and contribute to a well-rounded life?
Well, the science on brain science has been very well studied, and now we see the impact of screen time on brain science. And we know from substances like alcohol and trauma what that does to the developing brain. So they translate that into screen time, because we can't totally test kids and say, okay, you only have screen time, but we did see it from the pandemic. So the short answer is to delay as long as possible the access to gaming and to social media. And when you do engage in social media, you do it the way that your company is promoting it. You do it as a tool, as a business, as a way to promote yourself and to further your endeavors. You don't do it as a way to waste time, to solve boredom, to meet new people necessarily online. That's an outreach strategy. You're emailing your sponsors, you're going to events, and you're using social media as your calling card and a resume, a visual resume for them to check up and see, wow, what have you been doing? So that's the best advice now. And video games, unfortunately, athletes are very susceptible to addictions of all types because they have this drive and they're very driven individuals. And so what makes us exceptional in one area of life, it makes us also very vulnerable in other areas. So we want to be very careful with substance abuse and learn some coping mechanisms that are healthy, like meditating, reading a book, reading inspirational books, going for a walk when you're stressed out. And this is becoming very in vogue too for men and women to have more self-awareness and to have, build these coping skills that I didn't know anything about. I'm sure you didn't as a kid. And that can really reduce our chances of being addicted. And because video games are so highly addicted, we don't recommend using them in any sort of capacity, because it's almost impossible just to use a little bit without it becoming all consuming. And I will predict that there'll be a liability in the future, just as no one would willfully hire an alcoholic. Nobody will willfully hire someone who's a proficient gamer, because you really need to be playing a lot of time. and it decreases your actual dopamine and everything that's happening in your body as a real athlete too. So you're dumbing yourself down and making it hard to perform and produce those hormones you need to be really exceptional on the field.
Wow, heavy stuff. You know, as a parent of athletes and as a guy and a company that cares about athletes, it's fascinating to me. So tell me about what your company does. How do people find you? What are the deliverables that you try to instill, and who is your audience? Who are you working with?
Well, our audience is pretty wide. It ranges from corporate audience and adults, because this is impacting adults too in their work life because of that early use, and then it leads to problematic use going on. And the big problem is that there hasn't been a lot of good awareness about this before, because the tech industry is bigger than the sports industry and the entertainment industry combined. So there's a lot of big money that is dumbing down all the messages that we're giving to youth, saying, go into esports. It's going to make you strong. It builds creativity. Neurosurgeons do gaming, and look at them like, well, they're some of the top people that they have addiction problems too. If you talk to any of them, they will say that they regretted playing video games and that it really cost them a lot in their life with their personal relationships and even professional opportunities. So we give seminars to adults and to parents, and do some workshops with kids and teens too, but it's really hard once you get started. You really need that guidance and the focus, like what you're providing at the Players Nil, to how do we use this tool and how do we use it without it using us. And I think it's a great tool. I'm not anti-tech, I'm not against social media, but it has to be used with purpose, and you got to be smarter than the machine that that you're using. And your best intentions are not stronger than what the big tech has made. So there's no way you can use your willpower. You really have to be disciplined. I love the tools in your program that give that. It quantifies it. It lays it out like, here's what you should do, here's what you shouldn't do. And you know, it's not a willy-nilly, oh, if I just spend 3 hours a day connecting with people, I'm going to be TikTok famous. It doesn't work like that. It has to be with purpose and with intention. And the best ones we've seen have people helping manage them. So
Great. Well, you know, for all young people, I'm concerned, but again, in our focus for athletes. So you're a rough and tumble Minnesota kid playing all these sports, high school volleyball player, college volleyball player, academic leader, mom, now entrepreneur, businesswoman. You know, what a journey. Amazing. Congratulations. Give us a couple of tidbits. Give us some sound bites. 18, 19 years old, 17 years old, whatever you want to focus on. What should we be telling our student athletes today? You've given us a lot of information, but give me a couple of sound bites, your advice and best practices.
I would say focus on maintaining and building your confidence. And that comes with meeting other people offline. All the time that you're spending online, unless it's focused and it's for building your profile and it's very intentional, it erodes confidence. And confidence is one of the biggest drivers of success these days. And for women and men, you have to keep it and you have to keep building it, and you have to stay away from things that chip at it. So even if you have a great life and you're a really good player, the top performing athletes still have problems with confidence stemming from social media that are disturbing them before performances and disturbing their mental health. So there's nobody that's susceptible to it. And we just want everybody to be really smart and have it open so many doors. Instead of opening up your phone and opening your laptop, go down to your community center, go open up some real doors and do some real outreach. And I love your community service aspect that you guys focus on, the NIL, and just make all these important connections, learn people's names, and be as human as you can.
Awesome. I mean, I'm ready to go. I'm fired up, Coach. It's exciting. Again, the name of the company is?
Screen Time Clinic, and we do seminars for sports teams and corporate groups and parent groups about how do we structure this time and what is the was the research behind it? Because we have to know the stats and the research to build that resolve, to really value ourselves and our time, and to make some big changes from what we've previously gotten into some bad habits.
I feel a little foolish asking this question. Do you have social handles?
We do at Screen Time Clinic for Instagram. Don't do TikTok. That's a whole other Pandora's box. You can read about that on our website. But and LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn, Nicole Rawson. And then our website is screentimeclinic.com. So yep.
Awesome. Nicole Ralston, Screen Time Clinic. You've been an amazing guest, really an interesting topic. We'll have to have you back sometime to give us an update on what's going on in the industry. Thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for all the work you do supporting all the athletes out there, and especially the youth coming up. It's a great program.
Thank you.